I'm Teresa Bienken, CEO of National Speakers Bureau Canada and Global Speakers Agency. We're one of the original bureaus in North America, and we envision that the sharing of ideas inspires action to make the world a better place. Through bringing you expert speakers and thought leaders for your conferences, events, or training sessions, whether they be in person, online, or hybrid. And I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker. We're kicking off with a values mindset featuring David Allison, founder of Valuegraphics. If you want to better understand and connect with your members, customers, or target markets this year, this session will help you understand what people care about through the groundbreaking research of Valuegraphics. It's the world's first database tool that can predict and influence behavior for anything on Earth. He's also the pioneer of values thinking as the new best practice for organizational decision making. David spent his career working on campaigns for some of the biggest brands in the world, building an award-winning marketing creative firm, and is author of multiple critically acclaimed books, including his latest, The Death of Demographics. He recently partnered with Google's XI program to focus on belonging at events. We are thrilled to have you here. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me over. It's great to be here. Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to speak with me today and to listen to a little bit of information on this incredibly important part of what it means to be human, which is how we all feel like we belong. So I want to just start right away by, pushing the right button. How about if I do that? It all goes great in rehearsal, and then there we go. Now we're off. This is a really great way to start thinking about all of this. And regardless of the fact that we're here today to talk about belonging, the same principle holds true regardless of what aspect of organizational life we're talking about. We're all just trying to get some people to do something. It's kind of a grounding principle around how everything happens in the world. And every function within an organization. Now, in this case, we want to talk specifically about how do we get people to feel like they belong. That's the something we're looking at them. We're looking to see if we can't engender. But at the same time, it could be just as easily about how do we convince a group of people to buy a product or a service or a brand, or how do we convince a workplace team to feel like they're motivated and engaged. Anything that we're trying to do, it all comes down to just trying to get some people to do something, which kind of begs the question, how do people decide to do things in the first place? So here's a little story for you. 3 friends are out having a few drinks, haven't seen each other for a long time. They're in their local favorite watering hole. It's been at least a year since they've been together. So they're really happy to be with each other, and they're telling jokes and, maybe having one drink too many. And the smart one in the group puts up a hand and says, I think we should call it. We should probably get out of here. We got a big day tomorrow. And so they throw on their coats and they're walking down the street, and they're getting a little noisy because that's what happens when you're with your friends in a local watering hole and you haven't seen each other and you've had maybe one too many drinks. You get a little loud when you walk outside of the pub. So they're walking down the street, having a great time, punching each other on the shoulder. And then suddenly they turn a corner and there is a dark alley. And they have to decide, what are we going to do? Well, friend number 1, the only thing we know for certain is friend number 1's primary value in life is adventure, and thinks going down that dark alley is the best possible way to end an evening. What could be better? I'm with you guys. I haven't seen you for a long time. We've had one drink too many. Let's go down this dark alley and see what happens. It's like it's been put here just for us. And friend number 2, the only thing we know for certain is their primary value in life is safety, and they don't want anything to do with that idea. Why would we go down that dark alley? We're a little bit drunk. I love you guys, but this is the worst idea. Who knows what might happen if we go down that dark alley? And then there's friend number 3. And friend number 3's primary value in life is friendship. Doesn't really care. You know what? We can go down that dark alley. We can go back to the bar, turn on the lights, call the police, whatever we do. It doesn't really matter as long as we stick together, because that's what's important. I'm a little bit drunk and I love you guys. So the moral of this story is that we didn't need to understand anything about these people other than their values in order to see how they were going to behave. And you know what? Neither did they. Not one of them stopped and said, well, gee, I'm an 18 to 24-year-old male and I make $50,000 a year and I got a white collar job and I'm single, but I want to be married with 2.3 children. Therefore, I'm going to do things this way. Demographics have nothing to do with how people behave and how they decide to do things. We only think it does, and it's how we like to talk about people when we're sitting in our boardrooms. But here's the thing. If we go and dive into, get up away from the cute little story and start thinking about this from a scientific perspective, if you look at the fields of psychology, psychiatry, sociology, neurology, all of these fields that fall under the umbrella of human behavioral science will tell you that there's one common thread that unites their different perspectives on why do people make decisions? Why do people decide to do one thing instead of another? And it's this very simple idea that what we value drives what we do. I won't talk about all of them. We don't have time today, but just quickly dive into neurology. So neurologists will talk to you about a little piece inside your brain called the insula. And the insula's only job is to help you decide between A and B. And what the insula does is say, okay, how does option A in any situation, how does option A align with our values? And how does option B align with our values? The one that's most values aligned is the one your insula will suggest that you do and issue orders to the rest of your body to go and do that thing, chase that thing, get that thing, go and buy that thing, whatever we're talking about. And when you do that, you get that little values alignment, you actually get a hit of dopamine. So it feels good. And so you do it again and again and again. And that's how our brains have trained us to chase after the things that we value, that align with our values, and avoid the things that don't. It's a very simple biological process. So far we've been talking about this on a very personal one-on-one level. We're here today to talk about how do we engender this sense of belonging and how can we use values for large groups of people, an entire workforce, an entire customer audience, whoever it is we might be focused on. So here's another way to think about it that has to do with fast friends at scale. We've all had this experience because it's part of just being human. We've been away on a vacation or a trip or at a conference or something like that, and we've met somebody and we've just clicked, and you can finish each other's sentences. You know what each other's thinking. It's because you both have the same set of values. You're kind of insulas. Your insulas are just nodding along as if they're listening to the same, piece of music. You're getting along and you can see what's happening in the world through the same set of eyes. They're your friends. You've met a fast friend. Now, if you could do that at scale and you knew all of the people that you wanted to influence and engage and motivate, if you knew them like you know your friends, then think of how easy your life would become. You could suddenly just do things that your friends would like. You can do things that your friends will be interested in. You can figure out how to make your friends feel like they belong. That's not a hard thing to do at all. And right now, at this moment in time, we're really doubling down on our values. We see it all around us. Everything that's going on in the news right now, everything that's going on in the economy, everything that's going on inside our organizations, people are standing up and voting and acting and behaving according to their values like they've never done before. It's very obvious to us because we've all just come out of COVID and lockdown and restrictions and all the ensuing things that we've been dealing with since then. And we've decided as an entire population that we're just going to live our lives in a way that's a bit more values aligned. So I like to say that we've left the sharing economy, the gig economy, the experience economy, and we now are firmly in what I call the values economy. And yet, when we sit back and think about this most powerful force on earth that's driving every decision that every human makes all day long, 24/7, 365, all around the world, and we figure out how are we using that as a tool inside our organizations? It's a process I just call business poetry. We sit around, we choose some pretty words with 6 vice presidents and a box of donuts locked in a boardroom, and we say collaboration is a lovely word. We all like that. Cool. That'll be one of our values, and creativity and cooperation, and we end up with these pretty words. They're the most powerful force on earth, and we need to treat them with a little bit more respect than that. So as what my company's done, we've turned values into data. We've done close to 1 million surveys now around the world. This huge team of translators, bless them all, in 152 different languages across 180 countries. And we've built the world's first inventory of what everybody on earth cares about so deeply that it drives all their decisions all day long. And we found some really interesting things when we built this database. I'm going to share just 3 quick ones with you. The first one, demographics, people inside those cohorts that we're all used to using, those traditional labels about gender and age and income and marital status, number of kids, people inside those groups only resemble each other about 10% of the time. So that means if you stack 3 of them on top of each other, let's say men who are, 25 to 36 years old and earn $100,000 a year, you stack those groups on top of each other. That's 3 groups stacked on top of each other who are only about 10% similar into a larger group that's about 10% similar. And and we think we know who these people are, and we don't. They're 90% dissimilar from each other. And then, yeah, we go and spend money on this. We create strategies based on this knowledge, and we decide how we're going to move forward based on this very scant level of similarity inside these groups. Valuegraphic groups, on the other hand, you put people in groups and cohorts based on shared values, and they're as much as 8 times more aligned. So that 10-cent dollar that you're spending, if you use a demographic way of thinking about people, the 90% fail, the 10-cent win, is now an 80-cent dollar. So you have to ask yourself, which would I rather be spending? Which budget do I want? The one that's going to work 10% of the time, or the one that's going to work 80% of the time? I know if it was my money, I'd want to be spending the one that's going to work 80% of the time. The third thing we found is that there's only 56 values. And I think this is really a beautiful thought. Right now, at this moment in time in history, when there's so many forces who are so desperately trying to drive us apart from each other and create division because it serves their own ends, there's only 56 things that make us different from each other all around the world. You know, I put a picture of a piano here because it's kind of a remarkable number when you compare it to the fact that there's 88 keys on a piano keyboard. It's more complicated to learn how to play Happy Birthday or Chopsticks than it is to understand the sum total of what drives everyone every day to do everything everywhere on Earth. So we're actually quite united. We're quite similar. We're a little bit of regional variance from one place to the next, but it's not as big a deal as many people would like us to believe. So what does that leave us with? We still need these 3 tools. I call it a 3-legged stool of audience understanding. Demographics to describe a group of people. Still got to put a fence around a group and say, you know, these are the people I want to talk to over here. What we've been doing wrong is saying, and now because I know their demographics, I also know who these people are. And you don't, you just know what they are. That's it. So demographics describe. Psychographics, everything else we know from our CRM systems and from past experience and from all those surveys out there about emotions and preferences and likes and dislikes, all of that stuff is psychographic information. And it's a good record of where we've been so far and how these people have behaved up until now, but it's all historical because we wrote it down and we know it. So it's over, it's done. Even if it just happened, it's a click study and it happened, 10 seconds ago, somebody clicked on something, it's still historical. And what we're all trying to do, if we go back to the very beginning of my comments today, is trying to influence what people do next. How do we get some people to decide to do something, or in this case, feel like they belong? We need to know what their values are, because that's how our brains are wired to figure out how we're going to respond to everything in the world. So the biggest, easiest way to promote a sense of belonging in any group, anywhere, is for them to find values alignment. If you can see your values reflected in the people who you're around, the products, the services, the brands, the workplaces that you're part of, you're going to feel like you fit in and belong. So here's a few examples from some recent keynotes. Oh, before I go there, I wanted to mention this. There's a really great reason why we should be thinking about this from a financial perspective. We've been tracking this around the world now, and return on values is a very real thing. On average, across all industry categories, people will pay as much as 12% more for things that align with their values. They will trust something 20% more if they see that it's aligned with their values. And get this, as event planners, this is the number it's going to make your head spin. They will be as much as 40% more engaged if they just feel like their values are aligned with the situations they find themselves in. So a values-driven approach to whatever it is we're trying to do has some real financial benefits and some real great metrics that come along with it. A couple quick stories from recent keynotes that give you an illustration of how this goes. I was speaking to a group in the United States, a big national conference called Service World. These are guys, and they're mostly guys who own companies that employ the blue-collar trades, the carpenters and electricians and drywallers. One of the values we found when we profiled people who are thinking about getting into that career was the value of service to others. It ranks in the top 10 for people who are considering a career in the blue-collar trade. So I got up on stage and I said to these folks, listen, you're out there talking to these people you'd like to recruit and bring into your organizations, and you're telling them it's going to make more money and it's a good, stable career and they can get off shift work and they don't have to work nights at the bar anymore and all that kind of stuff. But what they really want to hear is that this is going to help them help people, that this is going to be a way for them to be of service to others. So that's great. Carried on, gave a bunch of other points that came from the data for that particular keynote, got down off the stage. This fellow comes walking over towards me and he says, listen, I have something I want to tell you. And I said, okay, what's that? Well, I own 7 or 8 different offices across the southern United States. And in each one, there's a fleet of vans. And in each fleet of vans, there's one pink van. I said, that's amazing. Good for you. He's giving the proceeds from that pink van every day to fund breast cancer research. Well, that's fantastic. That's service to others come to life. And he said, yeah, that's not the story. The story is the guys who work for me, they all fight over who gets to be in the pink van because they want to be the ones who are generating the money that's going to breast cancer research. I think that's a lovely illustration of how this stuff works. Another one, I'm speaking in Ottawa in the next little while about regenerative tourism. And we've profiled people who are coming from California to visit Canada, specifically for Indigenous tourism experiences. And it turns out that they over-index around the value of tradition. And what that means for them is respect for those who've come before. So what they are looking for is interaction with and stories from and an opportunity to learn beside the elders. They want to have something to do with the folks who have come before, and the connection to the ancestors and the elders is the way for people who are in the Indigenous tourism industry in Canada to really target in on that value, give them the values alignment they're looking for, get that dopamine hit, and get those folks to come and visit our beautiful country. Last one, I was speaking to a financial services organization, wealth advisory group in the United States. And one of the values that over-indexed for people who are interested in having a wealth advisor who do not currently have one is relationships. They're very interested in as many relationships as they can get themselves involved with. So one of the things that came out of that is a suggestion on stage as I was talking about that data point is, listen, these wealthy folks who you want to have as clients, they're relationship junkies. You need to introduce them to each other. You need to not deal with them individually as clients. You need to bring them together. You need to be spending money on putting these folks together and having events for them so they get to know each other and feel like they're part of something and have new relationships as a result of deciding to work with you as their wealth advisor. So 3 really quick little ideas. Okay, let's go take a look at the belonging index. This is the thing that we've been building with Google to help event planners figure out what are the actual necessary items that need to be in place for people around the world to feel like they are feel like they belong. I'm trying to switch over to this screen and talk at the same time, and it involves me being ambidextrous. There we go. Here's the Valuegraphics Belonging Index. So what happens is people who are putting on an event can come in here and they choose a region of the world. Let's say your next event is going to be in China. And then you select an industry of who are the folks who are coming to my event. What kind of industry do they work in? Let's say we got lawyers. So we got lawyers from China. So here's the top 3 things that need to be in place in order for them to feel like they belong, because belonging means different things to different people. In fact, there's 912 different things that it means. Now, the next step in this process is that we're going to be adding actual recommendations for how to make these different kinds of belonging come to life. So things that you can do in an event that will make people feel like they belong. So that's going to be available very shortly with all this great information. And I hope that you find it useful and you can use it to build really great engaged events. All right, I want to see if I can get my slides to go back to behaving. Yeah, when we finish speaking, every time I finish speaking, we give people a QR code to download the Human Values Toolkits. They get all the data that I've collected for them. They've got a bunch of instructional videos. For you today, instead of that, Teresa's got some great stuff she's going to send you, including a link to use the Belonging Index. And so hopefully you'll go in there and play around with it and find some fun things that will be useful to you. I want to wrap up really quickly with just a couple of key thoughts. belonging and using values as a way to understand people, no matter what it is you're trying to do, is incredibly effective, far more effective and efficient than anything we've been using so far. But it's actually a much bigger issue than all of that, because the longer we continue to use demographics to try and understand groups of people and say, those folks over there, I'm going to describe them demographically, and now I think I know who they are, it's just strengthening stereotypes. Because if you look around and say, well, gee, my target audience is 73% female, you're going to want to do stuff that you think women are like. And as we've learned, women are only 10% similar to each other. It's one of the demographic groups that we've profiled. So we're just strengthening stereotypes. And those stereotypes, those are perpetuating all kinds of problems like sexism and ageism and racism and homophobia. These are problems that come from us insisting on looking at the world with a demographic lens. It's not really a great way for our businesses, and it's not a great way for the world. But there's some really good news to end on here. And it's simply that if all we have to do is just change the way we look at ourselves. We've got to start with us, start thinking about what our own values are as we move through the world. And if we change the way we look at ourselves, it'll change the way we look at other people. Can't help but have that happen. And if enough of us change the way we look at other people, well, then eventually, slowly but surely, we're going to end up changing the world. We're going to end up making some of those issues around ageism and sexism and racism go away. Now, I got one last thing I want to share with you here. I'm going to close with something that's incredibly personal to me. And in fact, this is the first time I've ever done this. I hope you take it in the spirit in which it was intended. I'm a proud gay man. I've been married to the same guy for 27 years and live here in Vancouver. He's the best man in the world, and I'm very lucky. But if you tried to talk to me as a gay man, you'd miss me, because I'm not like all the other gay mans. It's just a demographic label that sits on top of me. I'm also a member of the Métis Nation. I'm an Indigenous citizen of Canada. And if you tried to talk to me because you know that about me, you're also going to miss me, because I'm not like all the other Indigenous citizens of Canada. But here's the closing thought. All through COVID, all through my life, up until today, every day I go to the gym. And at the gym, I find values like friendship and community and health and well-being and personal growth. These are some of my values, and I find that alignment there. So we belong where our values bring us together with others who have the same values that we do. That's where true belonging is going to come from. It's not the labels. It's not that I'm gay or that I'm Indigenous or that I'm a man or that I'm 58 years old. None of that matters. What matters is we got to find places and we got to find ways to talk to people based on what's inside their hearts and what truly drives them forward. If you use that QR code, you can find me on LinkedIn. And now it's time for some questions.
Thank you so much, David, both for the personal and professional elements of the talk and bringing to life the aspects of values and belonging. Especially this year, I've just seen so much more talk about going beyond inclusion to belonging. And so your work here is, it feels groundbreaking, and I'm so excited about the partnership that you've got with the Google XI and seeing all of that come out. We do have some questions that are coming in, so feel free, anyone, to add your questions to the Q&A. I'll start with this one. There is a question saying, in the Values Compass, Dr. Mandeep Ray posits that every country tends to have a unique primary driving value. Does your data support the concept that while there are common values, there may be some differences between primary values in various countries or cultures?
Yes, values vary from one place in the world to another. There's 56 values in total. But, you know, there's a handful of values that show up right near the top in pretty much every country in the world, all 180 different countries. There are things like belonging, absolutely near the top, family, relationships. There's a set of, I'm going to say, somewhere between 5 and 6 values that are always at the top. Which one's exactly at the top and which place, that changes a little bit, and what those things mean to people changes a little bit, but there's definitely similarities. There's a little bit of difference, but there's some similarities too.
Excellent, thank you. I hope that helps. The question there. And then there is a question about, do our values change over time?
Oh, that's always a great question. Our values do not change over time. We get our values when we're very young, during late childhood, early adolescence, during a period of time in human development that the sociologists like to call socialization. You get them from whoever's most important in your life at that moment in time. Could be a teacher, a parent, a friend's parent, who knows? It's different for everyone. Once those values imprint on you, they're yours for the rest of your life. You will react differently to the world based on what's going on, but it will always be because of those values. Those values will form your reactions to everything around you for the rest of your life. Now, depending on how you are asking the question, your values may reorder themselves a little bit. Like before you have a family, you're young and carefree and having a good time at college. Let's say your family, if that's one of your values, may not be at the top of the list right now because it's not the top of the thing in your mind. Then suddenly you find yourself, as you're a parent, you got some kids, family may move up a couple notches and become the most important value in your life. But you wouldn't have become part of a family if family hadn't been there in the first place. It isn't like suddenly you care about family. If you have family in your values, you end up having a family and it may move around, but you don't get to grow new values later on or discard ones you don't like anymore. They're yours. And sorry to say, you got to deal with them. Whichever ones you got, those are the ones you got to deal with for the rest of your life.
Thank you for that. And we have another question about related to events. And if you have ideas to build belonging with a hybrid event, so helping people feel like they belong for both virtual and in person.
Yeah, you know what? We've done some studies for MPI and IMAX and Society of Incentive Travel, and all my event planning friends keep asking me to come and talk at these different things. And I always end up saying yes, because the event industry has been good to me. It's my turn to give back when I do these things. So we've profiled people who prefer to stay home and do things digitally versus the ones who like to go and be in person. And we found some values that are similar and some that are different, but they are not the same people. So if you want hybrid to work, you need to understand that you got two different kinds of people here, people who are driven by one set of values and people that are driven by another. I don't have them off the top of my head, but if you want to follow up with me, I'd be happy to share that information with you and show you what those differences and similarities are.
Excellent, thank you. And yes, we'll be happy to share any of the resources that you reference post-event. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question here. There is a question about what is your process for identifying, like, can you identify a person's top 5 values?
At the moment, our system is set up to profile large groups of people. It's not a psychological testing tool, it's a sociological testing tool. However, in the fall or spring, my team's saying fall, I'm going to say it's probably going to be spring, we're going to have a psychological testing tool, a competitor for Clifton Strengths and those kinds of assessments. And that'll be launching. And then individuals will be able to get a very thorough and accurate read on their own values based on the million value surveys that we have in the database, and helping you understand how those values show up in your life and how you can use them to bring your best self to work and be the best person you can be in your personal life. And we're very excited about that and where it's going to lead us.
Excellent. Oh, thank you. There are a couple questions just in the lead up to my closing and follow-up, so I'll be sure to acknowledge those. I want to say oh, go ahead.
Just one person says the QR code's not working.
Yeah.
If that's the case, just go to LinkedIn and type in David Allison. You'll find me. I promise.
Yes. Good. Thank you. That was one of the things. So appreciate that. So thank you, David. This has been a really insightful session. And I can see from some of the comments, you're truly inspiring, going to realign my thinking, especially for marketing. Such an eye-opening session. So thank you for the feedback that our attendees are providing. And as a result of your really insightful content, David, really appreciate it.
Thanks. I'm really glad to have the chance to talk to all of you, and hopefully our paths will cross again soon.
Indeed. And so we will do a follow-up with links to the content that we talked about, as well as a recording of this session. And before we wrap, I am going to do the book draw. So give me a chance here to share my screen. We've got our wheel of names of everyone who RSVP'd, and we will see who the winner will be.
Look at this technology. Wow.
Cheryl, you are the winner. We will be sure that you get a copy of David's book. And again, thanks everyone for joining us. We're here to help you find great speakers like David Allison for your events, and happy to really support this initiative of encouraging a feeling of belonging in our industry overall. Thank you again, and we will see you hopefully for our next session, which will be on artificial intelligence and innovation. So watch for your invitation. Thanks everyone, take care.